Okay, today is 5th of August, and we are on the Khandha Samyutta, chapter 22 of the Samyutta Nikaya. Now we come to Sutta 22.59. This is a very important sutta. It's called the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. This was the sutta that the Buddha spoke to his earliest 5 disciples. And after hearing this sutta, all 5 of them attained Arahanthood. See whether any one of us here attained Arahanthood. That's what I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi, in the deer park at Isipatana. There the Blessed One addressed the monks of the group of 5 thus, "Monks." "Noble Sir," those monks replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, body is not self. For if, monks, body were self, this body would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of body. Let my body be thus, let my body not be thus." But because body is not self, body leads to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of body. Let my body be thus, let my body not be thus. Similarly, feeling is not self, perception, volition, consciousness are not self. For if, monks, these aggregates were the self, then these aggregates would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of the aggregates. Let my aggregates be thus, let my aggregates not be thus. But because the aggregates are not self, the aggregates lead to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of the 5 aggregates. Let my aggregate be thus, let my aggregate not be thus. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that the 5 aggregates, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, which are basically body and mind, the last 4 being components of mind. So the Buddha says that these aggregates are not self. If the aggregates were ourself, then we would have control over it, and they would not become sick. But because they are not the self, so they constantly become sick, and we have no control over them. What do you think, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Similarly, is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception, volition, consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. You see here how the Buddha asks these questions. He goes one by one, he goes through form, and then he has a set of questions. Is body permanent or impermanent? And then they say impermanent. What is impermanent? Does it give rise to suffering or happiness? And then they say it gives rise to suffering. So what is impermanent and gives you suffering and always subject to change? Is it fit to regard it as I and mine? And they say no, Venerable Sir. And he repeats the same questions for each of the other aggregates. That means all the 5 aggregates. He goes through one by one to drive home the point that these aggregates are a source of suffering. So, since they are a source of suffering and we have no control over them, it is not fit to assume they are I and mine, because when you cling on to them as I and mine, they give rise to suffering. You see a lot of the Buddha's discourses are like that. He repeats the point to make it clearer. Therefore, monks, any kind of body whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all bodies should be seen as they really are with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Similarly, any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception, volition, consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all aggregates should be seen as they really are, with wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Seeing thus, monks, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards body, revulsion towards feeling, revulsion towards perception, revulsion towards volition, revulsion towards consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it is liberated. He understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the monks of the group of 5 were liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, since the Buddha makes them see very clearly, and they can see very clearly when they listen to the Buddha's words, because they have attained the jhanas, and they see things as they really are, as the Buddha says. The condition of seeing things as they really are is a focused mind. The Buddha drives home the point that these aggregates are a source of suffering, and we have no control over them. And so it is not fit to cling on to them as this is I and mine. Then the Buddha is urging them to let go. And so they see the point and they let go inside, let go, and they become liberated. 22.60. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in the great wood, in the hall with the peaked roof. Then Mahali the Lichavi approached the Blessed One, etc., and said to him, Noble Sir, Purana Kassapa speaks thus, there is no cause or condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled without cause or condition. There is no cause or condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified without cause or condition. What does the Blessed One say about this? Stop here for a moment. This Purana Kassapa mentioned here is one of 6 leaders of external sects, other religious groups, and they have different teachings. Some of them, like Makaliko, Salaputta, say there's no such thing as karma. You can kill a lot of people and there's no sin and all that. So this one says there's no cause or condition for things to happen. It just happen by themselves. Just happen by chance or something like that. So this man is asking the Buddha, what is the Buddha's opinion? And the Buddha said, there is Mahali, a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled with cause and condition. There is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified with cause and condition. But Venerable Sir, what is the cause and condition for the defilement of beings? How is it that beings are defiled with cause and condition? And the Buddha said, if Mahali, this form were exclusively suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and it were not also steeped in pleasure, beings would not become enamored with it. But because form is pleasurable, immersed in pleasure, steeped in pleasure, and is not steeped only in suffering, beings become enamored with it. By being enamored with it, they are captivated by it, and by being captivated by it, they are defiled. This Mahali is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. It is thus that beings are defiled with cause and condition. If Mahali, this feeling were exclusively suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering. Similarly, if perception, volition, consciousness were exclusively suffering, beings would not become enamored with it. But because all the aggregates are pleasing, are pleasurable, beings become enamored with them. By being enamored with them, they are captivated by them, and by being captivated by them, they are defiled. This Mahali is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. It is thus that beings are defiled with cause and condition. So here the Buddha says, beings are said to be defiled because they are captivated by body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. And being captivated, they crave for these five aggregates, so they are said to be defiled. For what, Venerable Sir, what is the cause and condition for the purification of beings? How is it that beings are purified with cause and condition? And the Buddha said, if Mahali, this body were exclusively pleasurable, immersed in pleasure, steeped in pleasure, and it were not also steeped in suffering, beings would not experience revulsion towards it. But because body is suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and is not steeped only in pleasure, beings experience revulsion towards it. Experiencing revulsion, they become dispassionate. Through dispassion, they are purified. This Mahali is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. It is thus that beings are purified with cause and condition. Similarly, if Mahali, this feeling were exclusively pleasurable, this perception, volition and consciousness were exclusively pleasurable, beings would not experience revulsion towards them. But because the aggregates are suffering also, beings experience revulsion towards them. Experiencing revulsion, they become dispassionate, and through dispassion they are purified. This too, Mahali, is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. It is thus that beings are purified with cause and condition. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, the five aggregates, they are a source of suffering. At the same time, they are also a source of pleasure. So those beings who see them more pleasurable than suffering, they would crave for these five aggregates, the body and the mind, and so they become defiled. But people who are more mature, they feel that the aggregates are more suffering than pleasurable, and so because of that, they feel revulsion for the five aggregates, and feeling revulsion, they become dispassionate, they no more crave for them. So that is the purification of beings. So it depends on how mature, spiritually mature the being is. If the being is spiritually immature, then they want to crave for all the worldly pleasures, sensual pleasures. But beings who are mature, spiritually mature, and they see that it is not worth it. The suffering that we derive from clinging to these worldly things is so much, it's not worthwhile. The pleasure is not worthwhile. Then we let go. Come to the next sutta, 22.78. At Savatthi, page 913. Monks, in the evening, the lion, the king of beasts, comes out from his lair. Having come out, he stretches himself, surveys the four quarters all around, and roars his lion's roar 3 times. Then he sets out in search of game. When the lion, the king of beasts, roars, whatever animals hear the sound are for the most part filled with fear, a sense of urgency and terror. Those who live in holes enter the holes. Those who live in the water enter the water. Those who live in the woods enter the woods. And the birds fly up into the air. Even those royal bull elephants, bound by strong thongs in the villages, towns and capital cities, burst and break their bonds asunder. Frightened, they urinate and defecate and flee here and there. So powerful, monks, is the lion, the king of beasts among the animals, so majestic and mighty. So too, monks, when the Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the blessed one. He teaches the Dhamma thus: such is form, such is origin, such is passing away. Similarly, such is feeling, perception, volition, their origin and their passing away, and consciousness too. Then monks, when those devas who are long-lived, beautiful, abounding in happiness, dwelling for a long time in lofty palaces, hear the Tathagata's teaching of the Dhamma. They are for the most part filled with fear, a sense of urgency and terror, saying, "It seems, sir, that we are impermanent, though we thought ourselves permanent. It seems, sir, that we are unstable, though we thought ourselves stable. It seems, sir, that we are non-eternal, though we thought ourselves eternal. It seems, sir, that we are impermanent, unstable, non-eternal, included within identity." So powerful, monks, is the Tathagata over this world together with its devas, so majestic and mighty. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said, "When the Buddha, through direct knowledge, sets in motion the wheel of Dhamma, the peerless teacher in this world, with its devas, makes this known, the cessation of identity and the origin of identity, also the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to suffering's appeasement. Then those devas with long lifespans, beautiful, ablaze with glory, are struck with fear, filled with terror, like beasts who hear the lion's roar. We have not transcended identities. It seems we are impermanent." So they say, having heard the utterance of the Arahant, the released, stable one. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha is saying, just like the lion, when the lion roars its roar, all the animals panic, including even the royal bull elephants, which are supposed to be so brave and can fight in the wars and all that, can withstand arrows and blows and all that. But when they hear the sound of the lion, they panic and they so frightened that they urinate and defecate and run here and there. In the same way, the Buddha says that when the Buddha arises in the world and similarly roars his lion's roar, that means sets forth the Dhamma, teaches the Dhamma, even those powerful devas and devis who lived for a long time, when they hear the Dhamma, because they have psychic power, they can know when they contemplate what the Buddha is teaching. Then they realize suddenly that they are not eternal, that they are not immortal. They thought they will never die because their life is so long, millions and millions of years. And suddenly they realize that they have to die. And they know when they die, there are woeful plains of rebirth awaiting them. So they get very frightened, they panic. So powerful is the Buddha. The next sutta, 22.79, at Savatthi, the Buddha said, "Monks, those ascetics and Brahmins who recollect their manifold past abodes, that means past lives, all recollect the five aggregates of clinging, or a certain one among them. But five? When recollecting thus, monks, I had such a body in the past. It was just body that one recollects. When recollecting, I had such a feeling in the past. It is just feeling that one recollects. When recollecting, I had such a perception in the past. It is just perception that one recollects. When recollecting, I had such volitions in the past. It is just volitions that one recollects. When recollecting, I had such consciousness in the past. It was just consciousness that one recollects." Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, the ascetics who are able to see their past lives, those who have psychic power, when they look into their past lives, when they refer to themselves in the past life, they always to refer to themselves as that body, that feeling, that perception, volition and consciousness. So they always refer to the five aggregates as themselves. And why, monks, do you call it body? It is affected. Here it says, why do you call it form? And it says, it is deformed, monks. Therefore it is called form. Deformed by what? Deformed by cold, deformed by heat, deformed by hunger, deformed by thirst, deformed by contact with flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun and serpents. It is deformed, monks. Therefore it is called form. Let's stop here for a moment. The Pali word for form or body is rupa. And here it says it is deformed or affected. It's rupati. Body is so called because it is affected by the environment, can be changed by the environment. That's why it's called body. But another way of defining body is that which the seeing consciousness is aware of. It is the body, is the object of the eye organ, the external object of the eye organ. What the eye consciousness is aware of is body or form. And why, monks, do you call it feeling? It feels, monks, therefore it is called feeling. And what does it feel? It feels pleasure, it feels pain, it feels neither pain nor pleasure. It feels, monks, therefore it is called feeling, Vedana. And why, monks, do you call it perception? Sanya. It perceives, monks, therefore it is called perception. And what does it perceive? It perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, it perceives white. It perceives, monks, therefore it is called perception. Stop here for a moment. This word perception, sanya, perception means we have a certain conception. For example, we think the color is blue or yellow or red. But somebody else who might be colorblind would perceive it differently. So, for example, like you perceive that this lady is beautiful or that man is handsome, but somebody else may have a different opinion. But the Chinese translation is xiang. Xiang is more of thought, right? So it's not a very good translation. So because here it says it perceives blue, yellow, red, white, so you can understand it is a perception rather than a thought. And why, monks, do you call them volition or conditioners? They condition the condition, monks, therefore they are called volition or conditioners. This word, they condition the condition, is sankatang abhisankaronti. Sankata is the condition. Everybody agrees that the word sankata is condition. This abhisankaroti is to condition the condition. You see why I say so. And what is the condition that they condition? They condition form as form. They condition form as form. They condition feeling as feeling. They condition perception as perception. They condition volition as volition. They condition consciousness as consciousness. They condition the conditioned, monks. Therefore, they are called conditioners. Now, this word, sankhara, here they translate as volitional formations, and which I generally translate as volition. This word sankhara, in the five aggregates, sankhara always means volition or free will. Okay? But this term has a general meaning. Here they talk about the general meaning is that it is a conditioner because it conditions other things. So like volition is also a conditioner because when we use our willpower, we condition something, right? You use your mind to do what you want, change whatever you want, or to. The mind is a form of conditioner. The volition is a form of conditioner. So, but always remember, in the five aggregates, the word sankhara refers specifically to volition, not like here. Here they're talking about a general conditioner. Why, monks, do you call it consciousness? It cognizes, monks, therefore it is called consciousness. And what does it cognize? It cognizes sour, it cognizes bitter, it cognizes pungent, it cognizes sweet, it cognizes sharp, it cognizes mild, it cognizes salty, it cognizes bland, it cognizes, monks, therefore it is called consciousness. Now this one I think you can understand. Therein, monks, the learned, noble disciple reflects thus: I am now being devoured by body. In the past too, I was devoured by body in the very same way that I am now being devoured by present body. If I were to seek delight in future body, then in the future too I shall be devoured by body in the very same way that I am now being devoured by present body. Having reflected thus, he becomes indifferent towards past body. He does not seek delight in future body, and he is practicing for revulsion towards present body, for its fading away and cessation. I stop here for a moment. Here he says, I am being devoured by form, or devoured by body. What it means, you are being eaten, you are being scourged, you are being irked, you are being vexed, you are being annoyed by body. So, body gives you a lot of suffering. That's why he says, I am being devoured by body, eaten up by body, eaten here and there. He's trying to mean his body is a source of suffering. Similarly, he reflects, I am being devoured by feeling, by perception, volition and consciousness. In the past too, I was devoured by these aggregates in the very same way that I am now being devoured by present aggregates. If I were to seek delight in future aggregates, then in the future too I shall be devoured by the aggregates in the very same way that I am being devoured by present aggregates. Having reflected thus, he becomes indifferent towards past aggregates. He does not seek delight in the future aggregates, and he is practicing for revulsion towards the present five aggregates, for the fading away and cessation. Stop here for a moment. So you see, remember that day we read that if a person is practicing for revulsion towards the five aggregates, he is a learner, he's an Aryan disciple. He understands the Dhamma that we should practice for revulsion of the aggregates. What do you think, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? Similarly, they say impermanent. And what is impermanent? Suffering or source of happiness? And they say it's a source of suffering. And then, what is impermanent? Suffering and subject to change. Is it fit to be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this myself? And they say no, verbal sir. So the Buddha goes through the same process of asking each one of the aggregates. They answer in the same way. Then the Buddha says, therefore monks, any kind of body whatsoever, any kind of feeling, perception, volition and consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all the aggregates should be seen as they really are, with correct wisdom thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. This is called, monks, a noble disciple who dismantles and does not build up, who abandons and does not cling, who scatters and does not amass, who extinguishes and does not kindle. And what is it that he dismantles and does not build up? He dismantles body and does not build it up. He dismantles feeling, perception, volition, consciousness and does not build it up. Stop here for a moment. Dismantle and not build up means he practices towards the cessation of the five aggregates, not the building up of the five aggregates in a future life, in a future body and mind. And what is it that he abandons and does not cling to? He abandons body and does not cling to it. He abandons feeling, perception, volition and consciousness and does not cling to it. And what is it that he scatters and does not amass? He scatters body and does not amass it. He scatters feeling, perception, volition, consciousness and does not amass it. And what is it that he extinguishes and does not kindle? He extinguishes form and does not kindle it. He extinguishes body and does not kindle it. He extinguishes feeling, perception, volition, consciousness and does not kindle it. Seeing thus, monks, the instructed or the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards body, revulsion towards feeling, perception, volition, consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it's liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is called, monks, a noble disciple who neither builds up nor dismantles, and who abides having dismantled, who neither abandons nor clings, but who abides having abandoned, who neither scatters nor amasses, but who abides having scattered, who neither extinguishes nor kindles, but who abides having extinguished. And what is it, monks, that he neither builds up nor dismantles, but abides having dismantled? He neither builds up nor dismantles body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, but abides having dismantled them. And what is it that he neither abandons nor clings to, but abides having abandoned? He neither abandons nor clings to body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, but abides having abandoned them. And what is it that he neither scatters nor amasses, but abides having scattered? He neither scatters nor amasses body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, but abides having scattered them. And what is it that he neither extinguishes nor kindles, but abides having extinguished? He neither extinguishes nor kindles body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, but abides having extinguished them. When a monk is thus liberated in mind, the Devas together with Indra, Brahma and Pajapati pay homage to him from afar. Homage to you, O thoroughbred man. Homage to you, O highest among men. We ourselves do not directly know, dependent upon what you meditate. That's the end of the sutta. A lot of these suttas are quite similar, except that here this sutta it explains what you mean by body, what you mean by feeling, perception, volition and consciousnness. At the end it says if a monk has become liberated and become an arahant, even from far away the devas will pay respect to this arahant. 22.80. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sakyans at Kapilavatu in Nigroda Spa. Then the Blessed One, having dismissed the monks for a particular reason, dressed in the morning and taking bowl and robe, entered Kapilavatu for alms. And he had walked for alms in Kapilavatu and had returned from the alms round. After his meal, he went to the great wood for the day's abiding. Having plunged into the great wood, he sat at the foot of a baluva sapling for the day's abiding. Then while the Blessed One was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in his mind thus: the Sangha of monks has been dismissed by me. There are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhammavinaya. If they do not see me, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Just as when a young calf does not see its mother, there may take place in it some alteration or change. So too, there are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhammavinaya. If they do not see me, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Just as when young seedlings do not get water, there may take place in them some alteration or change. So too, there are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhammavinaya. If they do not see me, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Let me assist the Sangha of monks now, just as I have assisted it in the past. Stop here for a moment. So in this sutta, the Buddha was not happy with the monks, so he dismissed them and he went for alms round, and after his meal he went into the forest and spent the day alone. And then he reflected that maybe he should not leave the Sangha because there are a lot of new monks. Without a leader, the new monks are not steady yet. They may have a change of heart. Many times, if the abbot of a monastery is not around, sometimes the young monks they disrobe. So the Buddha reflected on this. Then he thought he should go back to them. Then Brahma Sahampati, having known with his own mind the reflection in the Blessed One's mind, just as quickly as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm or draw in his extended arm, disappeared from the Brahma world and reappeared before the Blessed One. He arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, raised his joined hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One, and said to him, "So it is, Blessed One, so it is, Fortunate One. The Sangha of monks has been dismissed by the Blessed One. There are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhammavinaya. If they do not see the Blessed One, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Just as when a young calf does not see its mother, there may take place in it some alteration or change. So too, there are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhamma Vinaya. If they do not see the Blessed One, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Just as when young seedlings do not get water, there may take place in them some alteration or change. So too there are monks here who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhamma Vinaya. If they do not see the Blessed One, there may take place in them some alteration or change. Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One take delight in the Sangha of monks. Let the Blessed One welcome the Sangha of monks. Let the Blessed One assist the Sangha of monks, now just as he has assisted it in the past. The Blessed One consented by silence. Then Brahma Sahampati, having understood the Blessed One's consent, paid homage to the Blessed One, and keeping him on his right, he disappeared right there. Stop here for a moment. You see, this Brahma Sahampati is quite helpful. Sometimes he feels that his presence is needed, he will come. So his Brahma heaven is so far away, but because of his great psychic power, he can just fly down here so fast, just as you can draw in your arm, or extend your arm so fast. And the Arahant disciples of the Buddha, including the Buddha, are also like that. They have also such great psychic power, and they think they want to go to the Brahma heavens. Immediately, their body can fly there. So in this case, this Brahma Sahampati is the one when the Buddha was enlightened and then decided not to teach the Dhamma. He came to beg the Buddha to teach the Dhamma and set the wheel rolling. So here he has come again. Actually, holy men like the Buddha, they are always watched after by the Devas. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and went to Nigroda's path. He sat down in the appointed seat and performed such a feat of psychic power that the monks would come to him alone and in pairs, in a timid manner. Then those monks approached the Blessed One, alone and in pairs, in a timid manner. Having approached, they paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down to one side. Let's stop here for a moment. So the Buddha used his psychic power to make the monks decide to come to him. So they came, sometimes they came alone, sometimes they came in pairs and all that. The Blessed One then said to them, "Monks, this is the lowest form of livelihood, that is gathering alms. In this world, this is a term of abuse. You alms gatherer, or alms beggar, you roam about with a begging bowl in your hand. And yet monks, clansmen intent on the good, take up that way of life for a valid reason. It is not because they have been driven to it by kings that they do so, nor because they have been driven to it by thieves, nor owing to debt, nor from fear, nor to earn a livelihood, but they do so with the thought, I am immersed in birth, aging and death, in sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. I am immersed in suffering, oppressed by suffering. Perhaps an ending to this entire mass of suffering might be discerned." Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is telling them, you monks, you are beggars, and this is the lowest form of livelihood. In the, sometimes we read the 10 contemplations that a monk has to make. The first contemplation is, I am now come to the state of being an outcast. This outcast is, in India they have the caste system. So in the caste system they have 4 castes. The highest is supposed to be either the warriors, Khattiya, or the Brahmins, the priests caste. And then followed by the merchants, the Vesa, followed by the workers, Sudra. These are the 4 castes. Now there are some so low they are considered out of this class. And monks are supposed to be like that. They have no caste, no caste. They are out of the caste. That's why they are outcast. So here the Buddha says a monk is livelihood, is the lowest form of livelihood. But the Buddha says still people take up monkhood for a good reason. And not because they are forced by kings or forced by death or because of fear or anything, but because they realize that there is suffering, there is earth, there is birth, aging and dying, and all kinds of suffering. So to end all that suffering, that's why we wear the robe. It is in such a way, monks, that this clansman has gone forth. Yet he is covetous, inflamed by lust for sensual pleasures, with a mind full of ill will, with intentions corrupted by hate, muddle-minded, lacking clear comprehension, unconcentrated, scatterbrained, loose in his sense faculties, just as a brand from a funeral pyre, burning at both ends and smeared with excrement in the middle, cannot be used as timber either in the village or in the forest. In just such a way do I speak about this person. He has missed out on the enjoyments of a householder, yet he does not fulfill the goal of asceticism. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that there are some monks, they have gone forth with a good intention, but after going forth, they are not able to practice correctly. They still have a lot of greed, a lot of lust, a lot of anger, muddle-minded, scatterbrained, and all that. So the Buddha said, it's neither here or there. Just like the wood from the funeral pyre, it is burned at both ends, and in the middle you have all the excrement. So you cannot use it as timber in the village to put up a house, and you cannot even use it in the forest to make a fire. So in other words, you are neither a good lay person or a good monk. There are amongst these three kinds of unwholesome thoughts: sensual thought, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. And where monks do these three unwholesome thoughts cease without remainder? For one who dwells with the mind well established in the four satipatthana, the four intense states of recollection, or for one who develops the signless concentration. This is reason enough, monks, to develop the signless concentration. When the signless concentration is developed and cultivated, monks, it is of great fruit and benefit. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that the three kinds of unwholesome thoughts will cease without remainder when the mind is well established in the four satipatthana or in the signless concentration. Meaning to say, these two are quite equivalent. In the Satipatthana Samyutta that we will come to later, you will find that the Buddha says if a person practices Satipatthana correctly, he must attain Samadhi, he must attain the jhanas, one-pointedness of mind. Also like remember Anuruddha, when they asked him what did he practice to get such great psychic power, he said the four Satipatthana. So Satipatthana is always equivalent to jhana. If you practice it correctly, it leads to jhana, it leads to samadhi. So here the Buddha says all the signless concentration must be a very high state where there is no sign or no object. So it says this is a good reason to practice the signless concentration, because then all the unwholesome thoughts cease without remainder. There are amongst these two views, the view of existence or eternalism and the view of extermination or annihilationism. Therein, monks, the learned noble disciple reflects thus: is there anything in the world that I could cling to without being blameworthy? He understands thus: there is nothing in the world that I could cling to without being blameworthy. For if I cling, it is only body that I would be clinging to, only feeling, perception, volition and consciousness that I would be clinging to. With that clinging of mind as condition, there would be being, bhava. With being as condition, birth, jati. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would come to be. Such would be the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if we cling in the world, it means that we cling to this body and mind. And if we cling to the body and mind, then this being, I am, comes into existence. You have this concept or this perception that I am or I exist. And once you have the perception I exist, then you have birth. The moment you think you come into this world, that is your birth. And once you have birth, then you must have aging and sickening and dying and all kinds of suffering. What do you think, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? Similarly, is feeling, perception, volition, consciousness permanent or impermanent? And they say impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Seeing thus, he understands, and then he becomes liberated. You see this last part, the Buddha always stresses this point. Are the five aggregates permanent or impermanent? And they always say impermanent. And then what is impermanent? A source of suffering or happiness? And they say suffering. So what is impermanent, suffering and subject to change? Why do you continue to cling to it as this is mine, this I am, this is myself? So when they realize this, and they let go and become liberated. So this teaching the Buddha gave to these monks as they came to him is like a wake-up call, telling them that you have taken up the ropes already. Don't be careless, don't be negligent, don't be lazy. If you're lazy, you're neither a good layman or a good monk. You're neither here or there. So also asking them to develop the 4 satipatthana or the signless concentration. Okay, 22.81. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Kosambi in Gosita's park. Then in the morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking bowl and robe, entered Kosambi for alms. When he had walked for alms in Kosambi, and had returned from the alms round, after his meal, he set his lodging in order himself, his kuti, he put in order, took his bowl and robe, and without informing his personal attendants, without taking leave of the Bhikkhu Sangha, he set out on tour alone, without a companion. Let's stop here for a moment. This sutta shows that says that the Buddha was at Kosambi, and at that time the Kosambi monks split because of a big quarrel. The Sangha split into 2 factions. So there was a schism of the Sangha. It was a very serious thing. And the monks were behaving very badly towards each other, shouting and sometimes fighting with each other and all that. So the Buddha tried to tell them to stop the quarreling. He tried so many times, they refused to listen to him. So he finally got fed up. So he put swept his kuti, put everything in order, then took his bowl and robe and left without informing the monks. Then not long after the Blessed One had departed, a certain monk approached the Venerable Ananda and told him, "Friend Ananda, the Blessed One has set his lodging in order himself, taken his bowl and robe, and without informing his personal attendants, without taking leave of the Bhikkhu Sangha, he has set out on tour alone, without a companion." The Venerable Ananda said, "Friend, whenever the Blessed One sets out like that, he wishes to dwell alone. On such an occasion, the Blessed One should not be followed by anyone." Then the Blessed One, wandering by stages, arrived at Parileyaka. There at Parileyaka, the Blessed One dwelt at the foot of an auspicious sal tree. Let's stop here for a moment. There's a story here that when the Buddha went to this place to live, that the elephant and the monkey came to attend to the Buddha. They served the Buddha and all that. Don't know whether it's true or not, just a story. Then a number of monks approached the Venerable Ananda and exchanged greetings with him. And when they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, they sat down to one side and said to the Venerable Ananda, "Friend Ananda, it has been a long time since we heard a Dhamma talk in the presence of the Blessed One. We should like to hear such a talk, friend Ananda." Stop here for a moment. These monks, they're supposed to be 500 monks who had just arrived after the Vassa. They wanted to see the Buddha and they found that he was not around. So they said they want to hear a Dhamma talk from the Buddha and told Venerable Ananda, probably wanted Venerable Ananda to bring them to see the Buddha. Then the Venerable Ananda, together with those monks, approached the Blessed One at Parilayaka, at the foot of the auspicious sal tree. Having approached, they paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then instructed, exhorted, inspired, and gladdened those monks with the Dhamma talk. Now on that occasion, a reflection arose in the mind of a certain monk thus: how should one know, how should one see for the immediate destruction of the asavas to occur? Stop here for a moment. So this monk was thinking, how can one know and see so that one can immediately become liberated, attain arahanthood, and destroy the asavas. The Blessed One, having known with his own mind the reflection in that monk's mind, addressed the monks thus: monks, this Dhamma has been taught by me discriminately. The 4 Satipatthanas have been taught by me discriminately. The 4 right efforts, the 4 bases of psychic power, Iddhipada, the 5 spiritual faculties, Indriya, the 5 powers, Bala, the 7 factors of enlightenment, Bojjhanga, the noble eightfold path, Arya Atangika Magga, has been taught by me discriminately. Monks, in regard to the Dhamma that has been taught by me discriminately, a reflection arose in the mind of a certain monk thus: how should one know, how should one see for the immediate destruction of the asavas to occur? And how, monks, should one know, how should one see for the immediate destruction of the asavas to occur? I stop here for a moment. Just now the Buddha mentioned all these practices, the 4 Satipatthana, the 4 right efforts, Iddhipada, the 4, Samavayama, the 4 right efforts, and then the 4 Iddhipada, the 5 Indriya, the 5 Bala, the 7 Bojjhanga, the Arya Atangika Magga, all these. If you add them up, these 4 and 4 and 4 and 5 and 5 and 7 and 8, they add to 37. They're called the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas. And this is the core of the Buddha's teachings, because if you practice these things, they will lead to enlightenment. So the Buddha says that he has taught these things, and yet a certain monk is asking how to attain enlightenment. Then the Buddha continued: and how, monks, should one know, how should one see for the immediate destruction of the asavas to occur? Here, monks, the unlearned, ordinary person who does not see noble ones and is unskilled and untrained in their Dhamma, who does not see superior persons and is unskilled and untrained in their Dhamma, regards body as self. That regarding monks is a volition, sankhara. That volition, what is its source, what is its origin, from what is it produced, from what is it born? When the unlearned ordinary person is contacted by a feeling born of ignorance contact, craving arises. Hence that volition is born. Thus, monks, that volition is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. That craving is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. That feeling is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. That contact is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. That ignorance is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen. When one knows and sees thus, monks, the immediate destruction of the asavas occurs. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, an ordinary worldling, he regards the body as the self, and that is a volition. And then the Buddha says, when feeling arises from contact, craving arises. It is a pleasant feeling. There's a tendency to crave for pleasant feelings. So that is how volition is born. But that volition is impermanent. And that volition comes from craving. Craving is also impermanent. The craving comes from feeling. The feeling also is impermanent. The feeling comes from contact, which again is impermanent. And the contact comes from ignorance. It's also impermanent. If you understand this chain of dependent origination, then you will immediately attain liberation. Then Buddha continued. He may not regard body as self, but he regards self as possessing body. Again, that regarding is a volition, and all the rest above is repeated. When one knows and sees thus monks, the immediate destruction of the asavas occurs. Or he may not regard body as self, or self as possessing body, but he regards body as in self, or he regards self as in body. And similarly, that craving and all that leads to, if he understands the chain of dependent origination, then he attains destruction of the asavas. Or he may not regard body as self, or self as in consciousness, etc. But he holds such a view, that which is the self in the world, having passed away, that I shall be permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change. That eternalist view is a volition. And similarly, volition comes from all the conditions, comes from craving, and craving comes from feeling, etc. If he understands all that chain, then he can also become immediately enlightened. Or he may regard body as self, or etc., or hold such an eternalist view. But he holds the annihilationist view, which is, were I not then, it would not now be mine. I shall not be, to me it shall not be. That means after death, then there's nothing anymore. Then even then, if he understands that is a volition, and then that chain of volitions that leads to suffering, if he understands the whole chain, then he becomes enlightened. But he does not regard all that above, but he is perplexed, doubtful, indecisive in regard to the true Dhamma. That perplexity, doubtfulness, indecisiveness in regard to the true Dhamma is a volition. That volition, what is its source, its origin? When the unlearned ordinary person is contacted by a feeling born of ignorance contact, craving arises. Hence that volition is born. So that volition, monks, is impermanent condition, dependently arisen. That craving is impermanent, that feelings is impermanent, contact is impermanent, ignorance is impermanent, etc. So one knows and sees thus monks, the immediate destruction of the asavas occurs. That's the end of the sutta. The Buddha has given this quite a long Dhamma talk to these monks who came to see him. Basically, this is a bit similar, the pattern, like the others. But here it incorporates the teachings on the 5 aggregates plus the teachings on dependent origination, paticca samuppada. So I stop here for tonight. Anything to discuss? Now you notice these suttas are all quite heavy going. Not like the first book. Compared to some of the longer ones, yeah.
And just Bhante said that the 5 ecstatic monks that we do jhana, are they, when they are listening to the Dhamma talk, are they in jhana?
No. They cannot be in jhana when they are listening to the Dhamma talk. But in the suttas it is mentioned, if a monk attains the jhanas, the 5 hindrances are permanently eliminated. Are eliminated, although the roots have not been pulled down, but they are eliminated, so that any time the mind is very clear. This maturing on the spiritual path is a natural process for everybody. And when you are more mature, then you make greater effort. When you are not mature, even though the Buddha is around, you will still not be interested to go and listen to him. So this process of maturing on the spiritual path is a very, very natural process. So if you make the effort, it's only because it's natural that you do it. For example, like our Siddhartha Gautama, because he had already probably attained Sakadagamin in his previous life, then even he had such a good family, such a wealthy and happy life, still he gave up and went forth, renounced everything to be a homeless beggar and suffer so much. So if your time is not up, you can't force yourself to do it. There's no such thing as forcing yourself. You see, the Dhamma is leading us in that way to understand the nature of the five aggregates, or the nature of dependent origination of suffering and all that. And if we understand that, then we practice according to the advice of the Buddha to become enlightened. So there are some people who prefer to go to the forest. And on the other hand, there are some people who can practice even without becoming a monk. Like during the Buddha's time, there were a few laymen. They still remain as laymen, but they practiced until they became anagamins. That means they had attained at least the 4 jhanas. But when you look into the description of about them, they, even though they stay in the house, they behave like a monk in the sense that they don't associate with people. They've given up their business. They let their wives look after their business, and then they let go of everything. Even one of them even called the 4 wives and told the wives that I intended to practice the spiritual path. If any of you wants to get married to another man, just let me know, I will give you away. And the first wife said, oh yeah, I want to get married to such and such a man. So he immediately called for that man and gave the wife away. So he, even though he does not go and stay in a cave, but to him his room is like a cave. He stays in that room and practice without going out, practice day and night until he attains the jhanas and becomes an anagamin. So whether a person becomes a monk or a layman is up to that person. And also, even after becoming a monk, not all monks will become forest dwellers. Not all monks will beg for their food. So it depends on the person, all people are all different. Firstly, there are cases of lay people like Yasa in the Vinaya books. Yasa is one man who comes from a very rich family, and the Buddha made him come out of the house in the night and go to the forest where the Buddha was. And the Buddha spoke the Dhamma to him, and he attained stream entry. The next morning, the father went looking for him, and then came to where the Buddha was. And the Buddha taught the same Dhamma to the father. The father also attained stream entry. Yasa, hearing the same Dhamma the second time, attained arahanthood as a layman. But after attaining arahanthood, he does not go back to the house. That old Yasa has died. There is no more of the Yasa in him. He has died. So you can hear Dhamma cannot fold up your legs like that. So a lay person can become an arahant, but after becoming an arahant, he is totally a different person already. He cannot go back to the home. And it is pure speculation that if he does not renounce, he will die within one day. There's no such thing mentioned in the Sutta on the Vinaya. It's just that he will not go back home, and it's impossible for a person once they become enlightened. That old lay person has died. It's no more that lay person, so he cannot go back to the home. He will either become a monk or an ascetic. He will go to the forest. I don't know whether that was a true story, but I don't know whether because of that people say that if a lay person does not, after becoming an arahant, does not ordain, he will die. But in this case, he did not die because he did not ordain. He died because he got gored by a cow. But in the case of this man, Bahya Daruchirya, I think he was not an arahant. I think he may have attained anagamin or something. Not sure. This in the monk's discipline, the Buddha at first said that the monk should eat 1 meal a day. Actually, initially he did not specify how many meals, and then The monks could eat as many times as they wanted and could go on alms round as many times as they wanted a day. But later, because more monks came in and many of them were careless, then the Buddha started to make more and more precepts. And then, so finally the Buddha said the monks should eat 1 meal a day. But there were some monks who were not happy. They complained to the Buddha, and then the Buddha said, okay, you can only go on alms round once a day. And after coming back from alms round, you take your main meal. But if you want, you can leave some food to eat later. But as long as it's not past noon. In Malaysia, noon is about 1 p.m. So, in other words, the Buddha is saying we can eat 2 meals, breakfast and lunch, is generally the standard. So, the Buddha said also that we practice that we should know moderation in eating, not eat too much. We should, if possible, we should try to everybody eat at the same time, breakfast and eat lunch at the same time, because it's not nice, doesn't look nice if somebody wants to eat at his own sweet time, because it's a monastery, it's not a household, it's a monastery, it's a disciplined place, and everybody trains himself in the spiritual discipline. So there are certain allowables that are allowed after noon, like herbs, dark chocolate, olive, this ginger, tea, coffee, and all that, and even cheese in the Thai tradition. But then you should know that these things are generally for us, like our monastery, disciplined monasteries, we don't simply buy some of these things as and when we like. We generally depend on donations. So if people give us dark chocolate, we eat dark chocolate. If people give us prunes, we eat prunes. And generally we don't buy these things unless we feel it's really necessary. So to bear this in mind, when we take out certain things supposed to last for some time, don't gobble them up in one day like that. Also have to think that it's meant for everybody in the monastery, and don't take too much. Other people don't have enough. So that is practicing moderation, because you have to understand, according to Buddha's teachings, that our mind is the forerunner of all states. The mind is the forerunner of all states. If your mind is trained, disciplined, then your feelings and all that come according to your mind. In other words, if you think you're constantly hungry, it's because your mind thinks so. If your mind is weak, and you think you cannot stand, and so it follows then you feel more hungry than other people. Because just like when you want to strive hard, person who is more disciplined, because he makes a determination, then he's able to do it. But if a person just starts with the mind half-hearted, then when a little bit of obstacles come, you give up already. So always remember that you have to be very clear that the mind determines the world we live in, determines the conditions. For example, if a person is always craving for example, a person is always craving for drugs, he's a drug addict. It's very natural that he always feels hungry, because he's always craving for that, hungry for that drug. So the moment he dies, he will be reborn as a hungry ghost, because his mind has conditioned him. I personally know of 1 or 2 persons, even now they have not died. They are already behaving a bit like a hungry ghost, because they were drug addicts before. When they eat, they gorge themselves as much as they can. They eat 2 or 3 persons share, they can eat as much as 2 or 3 persons. After 5 or 10 minutes, they vomit out everything. And then after that, of course, they feel hungry again. After 2 hours or so, 3 hours, they'll eat like a hungry ghost. Eat 2 or 3 persons amount. Then 10 minutes later, they vomit out everything again. So it already shows they are already going to be like that. Going to be a hungry ghost already. So we have to be very clear that we have to train our mind to be strong. If you don't train your mind to be strong, then you will never be strong, because you never make the determination. That's why the volition, always the Buddha mentioned volition is very important. Your determination is your volition. Cannot, if in this monastery, all lay people are supposed to keep the 8 precepts. If you keep the 8 precepts, you're not allowed to eat ordinary food after one. Or in the house. In the house, it depends whether you are keeping 8 precepts or not. If you are keeping 8 precepts, you are not allowed to eat after one. If you are keeping the 8 precepts, you cannot say, I'm keeping 8 precepts, 2 meals is allowed, so I take breakfast and dinner. No. 8 precepts means you only eat in the morning, after the sun comes up, that means after 7 a.m. and up to the sun, when the sun is the highest, 1 o'clock or 1 something. Always remember, like that day we read in the suttas, unless you become an Arya, you take monastery food also is on credit card. Kami transfer merin.